Unofficial chapter, not official.
So, Lenny, you were in Texas, huh? For
Yeah,
rodeo?
two weekends in a row.
How was that?
Texas is open. I get to go tested every week for work, so I'm stuck.
Oh,
That's awesome.
it's good to see you here, Peter and Mike. Thank you for coming.
I can't do that.
Your pin drop. Nobody drop it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. Yeah, you're fine. Don't need to. Funny how we're all watching our watches. We all get the same
Sorry to
time
hear about
now,
Rebecca.
11:29.
Sounds like yeah.
We posted on ASBO, the School Business Officials Organization. We'll see.
Yeah.
I reached out to the county also to see if they know anyone. She didn't, but we may need to rely on them to support us a little bit in the transition. But she is going to be a tough, the Outside College's gain and our loss, and it's going to be tough to replace.
Yeah,
I didn't have to worry about money. None of us had to worry about money with Rebecca
yeah.
involved, so.
Ready? I think we're ready. Okay. Call this meeting to order, please. And welcome everyone. We're happy you could be here, mask and all. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Scholl, would you lead us, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We would need a motion, please, to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, item 5, the curriculum. I believe this is you, Mr. Scholl.
Just our one item on the agenda, the COVID curriculum model.
Okay.
Couple things I wanted to talk about, and then share with you some information, and talk about some recommendations from couple different groups. To give you an idea of where we were before we went to break. We had 50 plus staff members on quarantine or isolation due to close contact with positive cases, and that was the reason why we I closed buildings and sent people home to kind of squash that as best we could right before we were going to break. Unfortunately, this past Saturday, early in the morning, we had a staff member, a bus driver, pass away due to complications from COVID. And so that is unfortunate, but I think it's an indication of the seriousness of what's happening right now. In your packet, there's right after the agenda, there's information about what's happened in both the county and the state, Chino Valley and Paulding over the last month. Cases in Chino Valley have more than doubled, actually an increase of 141% in the past month. This is since Thanksgiving. Cases in Paulding have gone up 80% or almost 80%, and in Yavapai County, 114%. This is over since November 25th. The town of Chino Valley has closed the lobby, senior center, library. The county has closed its offices to the public. And in your packet, there's also the benchmark, the metrics that the state puts out every every week. As of the last metrics published by the Arizona Department of Health Services for the week of December 6th, all three benchmarks are in the substantial risk range. That would indicate, and on there's also the big, that has each county and what their instructional model should look like. That would indicate they're recommending a virtual model of instruction. I am able to project out what it will be for the next couple of weeks. So the week of December 13th looks like continued increases, at least in cases. The week of the 20th is it's still early, so those numbers are likely to go up. But also you gotta remember that one of those days was a holiday being Christmas. And so the numbers I think are skewed a bit just because of people didn't go to the doctor and didn't get tested and things like that just because of Christmas, things weren't open and things like that. But it's still projected to be in the substantial risk range. Hospitalizations, I don't know, just because the data isn't available to me, so I can't do that. I could predict cases and percent positivity. So that's, any questions on where we were?
Do you know staff numbers right now?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've
Right.
been helping on breaks, so.
I know of one staff member that thinks they had it because their spouse did, and lost the sense of smell, things like that. So one staff member, and then Dr. Robert was texting me this morning about if I knew anyone. I just found out I knew of one person that's on quarantine because of being close contact at Christmas time, and learned after I had been texting and that there was three additional staff members that were on quarantine. And that just kind of came to me. We haven't made any request for information, not that we would get an accurate number coming back to us. And also I think it's too early. If you were with people on Friday, Monday may be too early for things to happen. So that's all I know right now.
Cindy, maybe you could share with Andy, because she didn't hear your story about that COVID case that you're with.
Oh, sure, so I have a staff member that's been in the hospital for almost 3 weeks, was released yesterday. Was incredibly safe, the mask, the whole everything, fortunately, whichever way you want to say it, her grandson came to live with her, and he infected her or brought it with him, and he was asymptomatic and did not even know he had it. Yeah, and she's still very sick.
So, what are you suggesting?
Well, it's just a little bit on what kind of the future outlook, and I mentioned it. We don't know what's going to happen in a week. We just don't know the staff members. I did attend a webinar the 18th on immunization. So the county had a webinar. It was really no opportunity really for questions, but they talked about, it was focused on educators and when educators can expect to receive immunizations. So the county has received the Moderna vaccine, different than the Pfizer vaccine in a couple ways. First of all, it's better for rural areas because it's easier to store. You don't need the ultra cold. It still needs to be cold, but you don't need the super ultra cold like the Pfizer needs. So it's easier to keep in rural areas. They expect to be able to vaccinate teachers and staff in January sometime. Don't know exactly when that would be. The negative part about Moderna, although it's still a good vaccine, is that it requires, instead of Pfizer, which is 3 weeks apart for the two shots, it requires 4 weeks apart, 28 days between the two shots. There is some effectiveness after the first shot, but the 94% that I think was what Moderna had measured is not, is measured after the second dose is given, and there'd be some time. The last thing is the county requested that education agencies complete a survey with the number of potential people that want to be vaccinated. I've submitted that survey, so I'm hoping that either this week or early next week we get an idea of a better timeline of when we can vaccinate employees. I'd love to do it on a Thursday. The reason is, they say that people feel crummy for a couple of days, like you might do with a flu shot. So if we did it on Thursday, they feel crummy, there's no impact on work, that kind of thing. So the key is we just don't know. We didn't know how bad it was going to get after Thanksgiving, and it got really bad. We just don't know what Christmas is going to do to us. I think that's the unknown is the impact that Christmas is going to have.
Do you have any information on how long after the second shot before it actually is at 94%? Is it immediate or is there a wait?
You know, and you and I looked up this morning,
Yeah.
I think it was 80 to 90%
On the first shot?
after the first shot. I think it was like 10 days after the first shot, so it
10
wasn't
days,
immediate.
so probably 10 days after the second.
So, yeah. So it takes some time after that second shot to get to that 94%, it's not immediate.
So question I have, how many, if you have a stat, how many families have pulled kids out of school to do online themselves? Do you know that?
So I don't.
Okay.
So you're talking, so they're not doing the distance learning with us, they're just out.
Right.
Heidi, do you know of any families that have done that?
Yeah, I would say that I'm thinking about 25.
Just from the high school?
And Brandy, what about you?
I know about 10 that have pulled out, but 4 have come back. They tried the K-12 online and said, never mind, sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours a day is ridiculous, and they've come back to ours.
And I have some that have told me they're coming back.
So those are I know of 4 that are still out, and I'm assuming they're still online.
And that doesn't include all the kinders that just didn't show to begin with.
Right, to begin with.
Right. So that gives you an idea from the 2 schools, but I have no idea from Del Rio or Heritage. Any questions about what I've talked about so far? So Andy, you wanted to hear recommendations.
Yeah.
So DLT met the Tuesday, which would have been something like the 15th, which was the Tuesday before we got out of school. And, with knowing what we knew then, the recommendation from DLT was to come back K-5 hybrid and 6 through 12 distance learning. We would need to do a distribution, if that was the case, we would need to do a device distribution, and we gave Larry a heads up that was gonna happen. So he's been working on it with his staff. And the devices would go out that first week to those 6 through 12 kids, if that's what we're selecting. Things have only gotten worse since then, really. I think there's argument to go K-12 distance learning.
Would the K-5 hybrid, would that start on the next week? Is that when it?
Yes, that would start on Monday.
Okay.
What you guys are deciding is what instruction's gonna look like on the 4th.
Okay, all right.
And for how long that is intended to go for.
Okay,
And I'll have some recommendations on that as well.
okay.
So, again, part of the problem is we don't know the staff that we'll have start on that Monday. And in any case that we will end up having to do a student support lab, which hasn't been too onerous. I think the high school had the most number of kids. And what did you have to do?
I think that the busiest day, the last 2 weeks, we had 8 kids.
Right. And that's probably similar at Del Rio. Territory, you hardly have any.
You didn't have any this last.
Right.
last time.
And Heritage has just a handful, I believe. So it's manageable. The other thing that we would recommend, like we did before, is that our self-contained special needs classes, so our centers classes, our EDP classes, and for those kiddos that need it in the extended resource, and that would be a conversation with the parents, that they would come the 4 days a week, no matter what no matter what the model is. In addition, I think we also talked about the ELL kids at the high school being in that same boat, just because everyone needs it. I don't want to say that that no one needs to be in school, everyone needs to be in school. These are kids that are the most at risk that we're trying to service.
Would transportation be provided for them?
We, because they're special needs, we are required to provide transportation no matter what. So those kiddos would have transportation to get them here at home, no matter what happened, just because we're required to as part of their, typically their IEP. I wanted to kind of have Cindy share with you, she met with the instructional coaches and kind of share with you guys her conversation with the teacher leaders that we have in the district.
So I met with the instructional coaches via a Zoom luncheon the last week before we went to break after staff had already been sent home during that week on the Wednesday. And their feeling was that we need, like unanimously, they felt like we needed to do at-home learning for the first 2 weeks of the semester. They were basing that on several factors. One was community spread. One was the first 2 weeks after break, if people have done things this week, New Year's Eve, things like that, that you need to give it the 14 days to run its course, to let that run its course. And they felt that the staff was ready to do that. I know K-5, they made accommodations. Both Carol and Brandy had talked on the Monday, and Brandy can tell you more about preparing in case we couldn't come back at least the first week with kids and what they were prepared to do. And so overwhelmingly, and the reason why it matters, what do the instructional coaches think? Because I talked to them about, because they asked what were the models that the administrators had recommended. We talked about the K-5 hybrid and the 612 online model. And the reason I asked them, what do you guys think? Because they have their finger on the pulse of the staff in a different way than the administrators do. And I'm not saying that staff wouldn't, would intentionally keep things from their administrative staff, but when they're dealing with somebody they see more as a peer, then they're probably going to be more open. So when they had talked to teachers, they had talked to paras, and the feeling was, and it was a really valid point, we would have no idea, literally until the night before or the morning of our return, how many staff members couldn't come, which is a very valid point. As it turns out, we could have very few bus drivers available. That's one place where we've been particularly hard hit. There have been some pockets in the community since I talked to the instructional coaches. What they had sort of anticipated seems to be coming true in pockets in our community, that there have been areas, whether like organizations, churches, groups, whatever, where lots of people in that environment have caught it. Quite a few of those people are school employees. And so they don't know how that's going to kind of play out. And they felt like if we gave staff that time and stayed out at least a week, and overwhelmingly, I thought the most interesting and helpful thing that came from the instructional coaches was, please don't make everybody pivot on a dime again. It's killing the teaching staff. When we make a decision and say, you have 3 days to switch up your instructional model, even though they feel like they've become far more acquainted with using the distance learning equipment, everybody has equipment, they all have tablets, all the teaching staff have their tablets, they all have their tripods for their tablets and all that. They feel like people need a week to pivot. So whatever we decide, that they need that week buffer before we switch instructional models again. And I thought that was a pretty valid point, because I asked them overwhelmingly what's stressing out staff the most. One is they don't know from day to day whether they're gonna get sick or, that kind of thing. But the secondary thing was the staff felt like having to make changes constantly with little notice was probably the most stressful. That they came to work every day wondering, okay, well, today, what's it gonna bring or what's it gonna be? And it sort of turned out that last week before break ended up being pretty indicative of that, when we had so many people on Monday who couldn't come to work. John made the decision, which was a great decision, just to accept for skeletal crews, for everybody else just to go home and finish it out, to try to keep that spread under control. So it's very, very hard to know. We were talking this morning about our staff has, if you look at numbers community-wide, percent community-wide since COVID started, our staff is actually disproportionately higher with active cases among our staff. And it appears to be that's becoming significantly higher. Our staff member who perished over the weekend was in an environment where lots of our other staff members are in a community setting, and those people have also contracted it or are waiting on the test results. So those are some things that when you look at, for whatever reason, we all know that it doesn't appear that the kids are necessarily contracting in a dangerous manner, although our vulnerable children are, our kids who've been seriously ill have been our, kids from centers. But it appears that that for whatever reason, it's disproportionately spreading among our staff, at a much higher rate than the community. So those were some things that we have talked about, and then just sort of the information we received in the last week since then has kind of borne out their concerns. So they were, give us a week to regroup. We really think that it's a good idea to stay out the first 2 weeks and do distance. We feel like the teachers are ready for that. Every administrator was clear with their staff that you need to be ready for any scenario. I know Heidi, I know Julie, I know Brandy, and Carolyn all told their staff, listen, these are the possibilities, prepare. I talked to Carolyn just before we came in. Her staff made packets at least for the first week. They have plans for things to do. So that's where we are with it. I thought it was all, John and I were talking, it's all bits and pieces of like a big puzzle that you guys kind of have to put together and decide what's the picture and what's the outlook. Hard part is you don't have a box to look at to put it together.
Can I share something? Can I share something? Do you mind? I just wanted to say that I've been in communication with some of the special needs parents, especially the center's parents, and there are a few of them that have said that they would like to keep their kids home for 2 weeks, even though they're in centers. If that option was for them to be in class, they want to still keep them home because they're more medically fragile, and so they wanted to have some sort of little options for them for those 2 weeks. So I just wanted to share that with you as well, because they wanted for it to run the course for the 2 weeks before and to see how the staffing would be before they put their kids back in school. So I just wanted to tell you that piece also.
How many parents did you hear from?
I've heard from 3 different families.
Okay.
And then we had a couple of centers kids get sick.
Yes, one of our center's kids was in ICU, but he is okay now. He's doing good.
Okay.
And Cindy mentioned this, but after you and I had talked this morning, Penny, I got an email from Chris Walton, our transportation director. Right now, we have 8 bus drivers that are either positive or are waiting results. So one of the things is if we did go in person, we would have to focus on special needs routes, just because that's our main focus. We cannot guarantee to get people to school. And if we were in school the 2 weeks that we were distance learning, we would have to cancel transportation altogether, just because of the number of close contacts and things like that was going on.
Which really isn't that big of it. I mean, people can get their kids to school.
Some people can. There's a lot of people that cannot get their kids to school and rely on us, and it would significantly hinder enrollment and things like that.
About 2/3 of our kids rely on our transportation. It's a pretty significant number.
So what I think I'm hearing is that you're recommending maybe start class on the 18th of January,
Which is Martin Luther King.
waiting 2 weeks till the 19th. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we would be distance learning, so we would start on the 4th with the distance learning.
K-5 hybrid.
Well, that's one of the options. It's the two options would be K-12 distance learning
Okay.
or K-5 hybrid 6-12 distance learning. That recommendation with the hybrid part was made 2 weeks ago before things continued to get worse and worse.
Right.
So if it was distance learning, it would be K-12 distance learning, and then there's a meeting on the 11th, a board meeting on the 11th. We'd have 2 new board members, you'd be off the hook. And then a decision could be made at that point.
And you'll be on the hook.
Yeah, we have 2, 1 off and 2 on the hook.
On the hooks, we're looking at each other.
But a decision could be made what to do at that time. But again, it would be important that we give them through the next Tuesday, which is it did you say the 19th? Because that Monday is a holiday, is Martin Luther King Day, so there is no school that day.
And Annie's question, I think Penny, you asked it as well, about do we have information about how many staff members may be quarantining right now or who have an active case? Because we're not in session and they're not compelled to tell us, we can't, there's like not a good way to gather the data.
Yeah.
But by returning even distance, it gives us the opportunity to collect effective data to make better recommendations to you on the 11th even. We'd have another piece to go on.
Okay. I think I'd like to hear, that'd be a good time to hear some opinions from Mike and Mr. Atona. Here. Do you have an opinion? We want to hear it. They can give an opinion. They can't move, they can give an opinion.
Do you want us to start back from here, or is that okay?
Wherever you're comfortable. Can you hear him? Max, can you hear him?
Yeah.
Mike, you want to go first? Go right ahead. Yeah, my wife and I follow this because we're of a very vulnerable age, so it's pretty important for us. We've been following the same numbers, and I'm worried silly about not only Christmas, but New Year's. I don't see the curve dropping off until late this spring, when hopefully we'll get some herd immunity from the mass inoculations. Even though personally, I'm a real believer in person-to-person, particularly for the younger grades, instruction. Right now, I would say everything we can do to keep the kids at home, we need to do. Whatever support we need to give them on distance learning, we need to do. We've got to minimize the danger to our staff and our kids. So, I personally, and I hate to say it because I'm 180 degrees from what I would have been 3 months ago, saying we've got to go full distance learning as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you.
I
Mike?
would concur with everything Peter has said. The one other thing that concerns me is always the quality of education that we're able to provide at the same time, which is a huge challenge. And I'm hoping that our administrators and staff are continually thinking about, how best to deliver as high quality education as possible during these challenging times. So, and I'm hoping that they're doing that aggressively and constantly.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question for Brandy. So you're over territorial. What is the feeling of you guys doing hybrid? Because I know the teachers don't really like the hybrid model.
So I did actually, I had a staff meeting, a virtual one, and talked to all of them and said to send me their concerns where they're at. They would love for, of course, COVID to be gone and they could just have their kids back normal. Most of them went with the hybrid model because that way at least they can get their hands on them and work with them a little bit and then send them home. We talked about, they did ask for a couple of different things to do all morning and then all afternoon. That doesn't work necessarily, the cleaning and the flipping of the classes, because we all went into this to work with kids. We want our kids, we want to make sure they're getting it. And it is hard to do the online. I mean, it's killing our little guys to do the online. But to minimize and to cut down, they're worried. I have some that are have underlying conditions and they're like, I don't know if this is gonna be the breaking point for me. So they're all over the place. They want kids back. They want it safe. So they did unanimously, for the most part, I don't wanna speak, unanimously vote that they would bring them back hybrid if the numbers didn't increase. They're very concerned that they're all gonna get. And that was but they wanna bring them back as soon as they can in hybrid in a safe for all of them. I can tell you, Territorial was a school that was hit. So we could not have operated if we wouldn't have went into the distance learning before. I would have had more staff out than staff at school. So it was, I thought we were very blessed that you guys made the decision you did at that. So
And that doesn't mean that they had COVID and wouldn't get it now if they were back in school. So it's not like they have an immunity because they had it. A lot of those were close contacts. Is
a
that
lot
correct?
were close contacts, some were close, yeah. It was really, I kept thinking, okay, enough is enough. When do we stop? But I was glad I did not have to inform families and tell them, your kids have to be quarantined now and due to exposure at school.
Right.
So, but the staff does want them back hybrid as soon as it's safe. If, at the bare minimum, when they can.
And that's the unknown, when it's safe, yeah. Anybody else?
I think, like, my biggest concern, obviously, which has been from the get-go, is just the education that our children are getting, and I see it firsthand with 3 different kids in this district. After our last board meeting, I spoke to my 16-year-old who informed me that a friend of his, that he goes to school here at high school, couldn't get his head above water with the, going from distant learning to the hybrid schedule, and he dropped out of school. And I am so afraid we're gonna see a lot more of that, and I don't want that to happen. Where there's no reason that a kid should be punished, because, that's the way I look at it, as a punishment, because it's a lack of, somebody should do something. I had one teacher in our district email me that said, hey, if you know of anybody that needs extra help, I'm willing to help online or whatever I can do. One teacher reached out to me and said, if you know anybody, and they said, I don't even care if they go to school here. I'm willing to help in any way I can. For our kids' education, that's the thing that it concerns. Of course, I'm concerned about their well-being and their safety too. But when you look at the numbers of it, we had the lady on the phone that was the health director, and she said the recovery rate for kindergarten to senior was 100%. And I get that we're looking at our teachers and our substitutes, but we have got to get these kids back in school.
Yes, please. So I agree with everything Annie said, and, back in October, I made it very clear that my child was struggling 100%. I want to move forward though and let you know that 90% of that was his fault. I think we all were looking at a blame that the teachers weren't doing their jobs, the administrators weren't on top of the teachers, that we have failed our kids. Our kids need to take some responsibility. Our parents need to take some responsibility. Those of us that see those children struggling, we need to stand up. We need to speak up. We need to help them just as much because they may not have the parental support. With that being said, of course they need to be in school, but they need to take some responsibility if we have some distance learning.
Yeah, well said.
I think that, you say 2/3 to, rely on transportation, but everyone's 100% relying on the education of their children, and that's where I watch this with my own children, and honestly, I feel bad for them. To be completely honest, Jackson's math, I can't help him with his junior high, he's a junior high school, I can't help him.
I can't help Mac with his geometry
So,
either, but we reached out to the teacher and we got full support.
I understand taking responsibility, but there's kids that are really struggling with learning how with the distance learning.
So if we were to, on Monday, go back, we don't have enough bus drivers as of today to cover their all routes.
If it was today, that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
In even just the hybrid? Kids?
Correct.
Still the same number of routes.
Right.
And then we have no idea about teachers.
Correct. And subs.
And Paris.
It's unfortunate that we had 2 weeks break, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it just adds so many unknowns.
Right.
With the family gatherings that are during that time, along with we don't have the staff to kind of survey them accurately to know who's doing what. And, I'm not as worried with New Year's, but there's gonna be a lot of gathering at New Year. And that's 3 days before we're back in school.
Right.
And so we don't know, really we won't even know on that Monday how New Year's is gonna impact any kind of potential cases that come up.
And we won't know enough either on January 11, right?
We'll know more.
We'll know more, but not.
Because that'll be a week and a half. They have changed the quarantine rules. It's now 10 days. It was 14, it's down to 10. It actually can get down to, I think, 7 if you, with a negative test after day 5.
Right.
So the quarantine time, so they're thinking that things happen a little bit quicker than they did initially. So that's a good thing. And so, but at the same time, it's the timing just is horrible with things going on right now.
But a lot of people that I know, and I know that I know everybody's different, but I know a lot of people that are taking precaution. Like I know families that didn't gather over Christmas or haven't gathered to stay safe. And I feel like there's a majority of people that's what they're doing so that they can, again, I don't know, I'm just saying for the people that I know, a lot of people are pretty much quarantined, on their own, and not celebrating Christmas with their families and not done stuff so that this can pass.
I can tell you, I went into the Circle K today, got an iced tea. The employees were wearing their masks under their nose. And there was maybe 10 people in there and maybe 4 were wearing masks. And so there was a majority of the people that were not wearing masks at Circle K. I go get a tea pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I wear my mask and that's pretty typical, not just in Chino. I think that's typical all over in the area.
Just talking to patients this morning, some got together with family, some didn't. And it's all over the board. There's no precise, concise way to do things. And the way people are thinking is, it's just family.
And I realize this doesn't necessarily impact Chino Valley, but yesterday they had more air passengers since the beginning of COVID. There's 1.7 million or something. Obviously, we did not have 1.7 million air passengers in Chino Valley, but it's a very large number that people were not being necessarily, they did not stay home.
Right.
John? You probably didn't see it yet, but we just received an email from another staff member that they have COVID. And they have a spouse in the district also.
So that's 2?
Just now, yeah.
Okay.
And I just got a text from one of the special ed teachers that her and 2 paras were directly exposed by a family member at Christmas. So they're waiting to see if they have it or not.
And that's some of the 4 that I had talked about earlier.
Okay,
That's 3 of the 4 that I talked about earlier.
not extra.
Yeah. Yeah. We had talked, I don't know if there's anyone outside that's wanting any public. Can someone call Glenn? Is Glenn right there? No one came? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was the case.
Yeah.
That we didn't have anyone that wanted to speak.
John?
Well, I think we're at a place now where we are going to need a motion.
So what are our options?
Matt has a question, I think.
Well, I just wanted to point out, we don't have anybody here. We currently have 118 that are viewing this live right now, and a dozen or so comments that are fairly mixed.
Thank you.
So people are paying attention to what's going on live.
Thank you.
I don't know, I kind of look at, let me tell you another perspective that I look at and take it what you will. I look at it as if we're going back in session and Prescott and Prescott Valley aren't, don't we have, step up by having the substitutes that they normally would have? Like, that's a logical question, right?
Potentially, yes. Now, I had heard, and I don't know, I thought that Humboldt K-5 was gonna go hybrid. I don't know if that's the case or not. I haven't heard for sure. I know Prescott is K-12 is going to be distance learning,
Till,
at least through Martin Luther King Day.
And we don't know if subs are marking themselves out in the system or not.
yeah, I'm just saying that that's something that we need to take into consideration. And one of the other things I think has always been something is that, you know, it is our job. I get it that we need to make sure everybody's safe, but it's also our job to make sure that our children are educated. And I know we can't predict what's gonna happen, and we didn't predict that we'd still be here after our tough decisions we made last March. But I don't know, I'm for getting kids back in school, and I think we have a couple things on our side, and one of them is the fact that if, you know, we need subs, that right now we won't have to fight for them because no other schools are in session.
Can I respond?
Sure, yeah, please.
You know, and I completely agree with you. Everything that we've done, every decision that we've made has been, how do we get kids back in school safely? And every decision that we've made always has had that educational part to it. How can we educate our kids? I don't know if we can educate our kids if we have substitutes in the classroom. It's not the same. Just because, you know, if we have subs available and we put them in there, they're not learning if the teacher's not in there. And so, you know, I completely understand and agree with everything that you're saying. But every decision has had that component as part of the decision. We need to educate kids. And I've said all along, our kids learn better and our teachers teach better when the kids are in school and the teachers can teach face-to-face. That's number one. That's the ideal. But it's not ideal, and this is no one's fault. This is how it is worldwide. It's not centered in Chino, it's not centered in Arizona, it's not centered in the United States. This is how it is worldwide. And we're just dealing with the best that we can with the situation that we're given. And unfortunately, it's probably not safe to have staff in school, or kids. But you know, I agree. We need to have kids in class. And to another point, we didn't do a great job in March when we went to distance learning. We have learned a lot between now and then. We've learned a lot in the last 4 months since August, or 5 months. So the education that a student gets distance learning now is completely different than they got in March or even in August. People may not like it. Kids are going to struggle. But it is better than it was at those times. And it's not ideal for certain. Definitely not ideal. Not where we want to be.
Well, I personally think, my opinion is that maybe we should continue to distance learn until January 19, and at that time, go to hybrid K through 5.
Well, and you may be able to just kind of go through the 19th and then make a decision on the 11th.
That's true too.
What you'll have more
That's what I'm
information.
wondering, if the 11th would have enough information.
I think that we'll have a week's worth of where our staff is at.
But even on the 11th, then we still want to try to give our teachers and support staff the 1 week notice.
Right, and they would have a week,
Okay,
because they wouldn't come to school until the
that's
next Tuesday.
okay.
Right.
I would like to see K through 5 start next week, the hybrid schedule. If we're gonna distance learn between 6 to 12, I say we keep K through 5. The teachers want their kids back. Obviously, the kids need to be back. I'd say we do K through 5, hybrid next week, continue distant learning through 6 through 12, and we evaluate it on the 11th and come shoot for everybody being in school on January 19th.
What do we do about bus drivers in that circumstance? That's my,
Can we
that's,
pull bus drivers from surrounding areas?
They don't know the routes.
They don't know routes and they're not our employees.
And we don't have a way to onboard them this week as an employee.
You know, I could reach out, but I can't guarantee that we have anything available, any extra employees available, any extra bus drivers.
And right now, we don't know K-5 teacher situations, right?
No, correct.
Hey Brandy, when did you have your last?
I was just gonna say, just to clarify, when I had that meeting, it was when staff was still there in person, so, let me look up this first email date. December 10th is when I got the first email, so it was way back.
Okay.
So it must have been maybe it was December 10th. I'm not 100% sure, because this was at 1:30. So it was back when, and they did say, you know, they want kids back, but the numbers in the red, all areas are very alarming to them, and that's a concern. But they don't want it out there that they don't want kids back. They absolutely 100% want kids back when it's safe.
And Jen, I know I asked this at the last meeting, I'm gonna ask again, just to clarify for those watching. The benchmarks in the red are not something we just willy-nilly pulled out and said, these are what we want to achieve. They have been given to us by the state of Arizona, correct?
Yes, the Arizona Department of Health Services are the ones that collect the data. The data comes from different testing labs and physicians and the counties, all funnel their information into the Arizona Department of Health Services. They publish the data. There's two places to look for it. So if you go to azdhs.gov, G-O-V, there's a data dashboard that you can just click on that homepage and it'll take you to the data dashboard. There's a little map of Arizona. If you scroll down, you click on Yavapai and it'll give you the Yavapai specific information. For cases, for the percent positivity is the two that I look for. There is something about hospitalizations, but it doesn't correlate to what the benchmarks are. So all that information is on there. And if you go to the home page every Thursday at 9 o'clock, they have a schools button that you connect on or click on. And that's the information that has the actual benchmark numbers that are issued every Thursday at 9.
And I guess just to be clear, what I was looking for is the green, the yellow, the red, which are, you know, in-person, hybrid, or virtual. Those are recommended by the state of Arizona.
Correct. Those are recommendations based on their expertise as
And we are
medical professionals.
currently in the red.
Significantly, so we're not even close.
Okay.
To be in the red, I think it was 100 cases per 100,000, and the last number was over 500. So it was 5 times that benchmark.
If we go to the complete distant learning, where will the teachers be? Are they gonna be teaching from home, or are they gonna be teaching from their classrooms?
We had talked about that this morning, and really, I'm thinking that at least for the first week, it's probably best that they're at home. And then the second week, they come back in, like until, and that's kind of like what happened in reverse when we went to distance learning last time, is we kept them on campus until things kind of got in the community out of control and things got worse, and we sent them home. Here, we're hoping that if they're home, we kind of know who is close contact, who may test positive, and then bring them back onto campus the second week for that accountability portion. So that's just, I haven't talked to any principals about that. That's new to them. Literally, it was Cindy and I discussing this morning, but that's kind of just an off-the-cuff plan that we had talked about.
What is I don't even know if we know this number, but it seems to me that the younger grade levels, the transportation, their parents seem to bring them more often. Do you find that that's true, Brandy? What's your like, how many people rely on the bus? Is it 2/3 at your school?
We have the majority come in buses.
Okay.
I have some that are huge buses and some that are small buses. And it depends, sometimes I have more that drop off in the morning because it's easy when they're on their way to work, but then they ride the buses home. But the majority still ride the buses.
And that's true, what Brandy said is true for all our buses, that kids seem to get dropped off get dropped off in the morning, because somebody can get them at 7:30 on their way to work at 8. So we have a lighter load in the AM than we do in the PM across the board. That's not just at Territorial, that's the way it is for everybody.
High school probably has the lowest percent that ride buses kids drive.
We're, I think, ready for a motion. You want to make one?
I don't even know what to make.
Let me try this and see what y'all think. I would make a motion that starting January 4th, K through 12 would be distance learning until January 19th. We will readdress it on January 11th to determine what the next little bit, not even gonna say the quarter or the semester, the next little bit might look like, with the exception of centers. Am I getting this right, Nicole? Centers,
EDP,
EDP, and some resource.
extended resource,
Extended resource.
and then also our high school ELL.
ELL, correct. Okay, I think that's what I meant to say.
Pre-K.
John,
Yes.
Oh,
can I address pre-K? I mean, will you address pre-K so I know what we're doing with them?
Okay.
that would be in that same group.
And PK will be in that same group.
Okay, just as long as it's pre-K.
Let me clarify. So what about preschool? Would that be distance? or
If
would they-
preschool, I mean, if we're distance, then if K-12 is distance, preschool would be distance.
Got it.
If we come back hybrid, then preschool would come back hybrid.
Got it.
So
So
it
that's
would
down
be,
to
it would be distance pre-K 12.
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have to say all that again?
Did you get that, Suzanne?
Yes. Thank you.
Got it, thank you. Okay, motion on the
Unless someone needs to
floor.
hear it again.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you very much. Very hard decision. I guess we're ready to adjourn then.
Right, we'll get together again on the 11th.
Okay.
For those on TV or on YouTube, it will have the same situation where it can be watched virtually, so you know what's going on. But, and then we'll have 2 new board members.
Yes,
Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Robert, for all your service.
yes, thank you,
This
Doctor.
is your last one. We thought 2 meetings ago was your last one. but-
Yeah.
we just keep sharing the love.
Thank you all. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Larry.
Are we still
for all
on
your
that?
work.
We are.
For those on, that will be getting out information about device distribution. We'll get it out as soon as we can, but it's likely going to be the first week that we are, so the week of the 4th, there'll be some kind of device distribution, and information will be forthcoming. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Awful.
I don't know what to say.
Well, because we all want the kids.
I